college football will give you chaos, and we got chaos.
The entire game was a fiasco.
You owe the gods one for that Oklahoma State cover.
Notre Dame defense is just as guilty as this terrible offensive performance. Riley Leonard, 20 of 32, 2 interceptions, 163 yards against a MAC defense. Are you letting an 11-1 team in with a loss to a MAC team at home?
The Big Bets on Campus podcast.
All right, here we go.
What's up, Degenerate Nation? Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast. This is the Week 2 college football betting recap. I'm Stuckey. Joining me, as always, my fellow BBOC co-host, Colin Wilson. Oh, baby. We have a lot to get to today. It looked on the surface, I was like, this is going to be a pretty boring Week 2 Saturday slate. And just when you think that, I always say this for years, going on 8 years now, whenever you think it's going to be a boring college football slate, next Saturday is one of them. Doesn't look like a great one. On the surface, college football will give you chaos, and we got chaos. A lot of games to get to. The lead result was Notre Dame going down as 4 touchdown favorites. They actually weren't the biggest favorite to go down on the day. Eastern Washington was a 5 touchdown favorite to Drake, and Drake pulled off the road upset. But Colin, a lot to get to. Your Hogs, hell of an effort. They actually outgained Oklahoma State, almost another upset there, by 300 yards.
Mm-hmm.
You owe the gods one for that Oklahoma State cover. That was a wild game.
Yeah, from the start, it was everything you would want when you back a college that you love so much. From an offensive perspective, they stayed as hot as they were against UAPB. It was great to see what Taylor Green can do. I think we're starting to see just the tip of the iceberg about what kind of SEC quarterback he can be. And at the same time, Oklahoma State just took the entire first half off. Don't know where they disappeared. Alan Bowman couldn't hit a pass. Ollie Gordon couldn't run the ball. The Arkansas defense playing the best in the Sam Pittman era. I'd give all the credit to Travis Williams there. And then you knew that Oklahoma State at some point was going to come back. And then things with, you hear Gundy talking about the rules, about how they cleared crackback blocks, about how the clock management, 3 seconds were taken off, should have been 7 seconds. And then Arkansas tied the game with 2 seconds. The entire game was a fiasco. Absolute fiasco. Arkansas gained 63% of available yards to Oklahoma State's 42%. The Razorbacks may have lost. They played really good defense for a half. They played really good offense for nearly a full game. I'm pretty confident going in that I'm not going to be wearing a Bobby Petrino neck brace at the end of the season when they make a bowl with 6 wins.
All right, we will find out about that, but many more games before we have to find out about Arkansas's bowl eligibility. Let's first start. Let's talk about Notre Dame first. Look, I expect them to be flat. Northern Illinois, those kids to come out with their hair on fire. Northern Illinois looked great. They were the better team for most of that game. Notre Dame couldn't throw the ball. It was a bad look for Texas A&M for that to happen. Mm-hmm. But this is how Marcus Freeman has done this in the past. Maybe he's like more of a rah-rah guy that gets his teams up for these huge games, and then they just don't have the same juice for some of these other games where, remember the Marshall game when they lost at home?
Right.
There's been a couple of these spots where Notre Dame just looked flat, but it was the first top 5 win ever for the MAC, and they almost had another one because they almost had 2 top 10 wins in the same day on the road at Notre Dame and then at Penn State, because Bowling Green also came to play, and Bowling Green was shorthanded. So I think that Penn State and Notre Dame got caught being a bit flat, but still make you kind of scratch your head with both performances. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, for Notre Dame and Northern Illinois, Northern Illinois had 18 combined third down and fourth down attempts. Average distance to go, 4.2 yards. Like usually the national average is around 7.5 yards to get your third down conversion. 4.2 yards means that Northern Illinois was in standard downs most of the day. If you look at passing plays alone, in passing downs, monster difference between Notre Dame and Northern Illinois. Northern Illinois, a 65% success rate in passing downs. That is almost double the national average. Notre Dame well below it, 36% success rate in passing downs. That's where the game was played. The fact that Northern Illinois never got off the field, kept the chains moving. Notre Dame defense is just as guilty as this terrible offensive performance. Riley Leonard, 20 of 32, 2 interceptions, 163 yards against a MAC defense. I mean, I hate to silo NIU off like that, saying you're a MAC defense, but Notre Dame should not have any problems with this. You win at Texas A&M, you shouldn't be struggling here. So, those to me stuck like as far as Notre Dame goes, I don't know if they can make the playoff, right? Let's just assume they win their final 10 games. A lot of big, brand name teams that they can beat. Are you letting an 11-1 team in with a loss to a MAC team at home?
They could
That's
get in
a
if they
tough
win
question.
out. I mean, obviously, it depends on what happens with other teams, but I don't think they're getting in if they lose another game. And they got to go to USC, who looks really good at the end of the year. So that loss ultimately could keep them out because that is a stain. That is a stain on the resume that will not go away. So yeah, I mean, but Bowling Green, Northern Illinois might be the class of the MAC. We'll find out. I mean, Gabbert's still there with Miami of Ohio. I think Toledo's taken a big step back. Toledo was I kind of dabbled in too much trash this weekend, which burnt me. I had I guess before we get to the other games, we can do best call, worst call, bet, regret.
Well, before we do that,
yeah.
Ohio covered again, right? They beat South Alabama by a TD. So
Yep.
I thought this Ohio team was going to be the worst in the MAC. It's crazy.
Yep. That will probably be Kent or Akron again. Because they have not improved at all. Kent State lost at home to St. Francis. So yeah, let's do best call, worst call, bet, regret. Best call probably Northern Illinois, and they won as 4 touchdown underdogs. And worst call had a few of those. I had the most average 500 weekend of all time. I mean, my bets. I'm talking. I was as close as you can get to net zero. People always say like break even. Like I'm talking mathematically, so close to breaking even. It was it is insane. Went 500 on best bets, 500 on my spots. It was just crazy, but a lot of worse calls in there. Starting, well, I mentioned Duquesne. I played the spot there. They lost so much. They were just completely overmatched. And then when I was watching Toledo against UMass, and yes, Toledo won by 15-16. They had a kick return touchdown, turnover luck. They had another late touchdown after all these personal fouls on a failed onside kick. Toledo did not look good. Toledo manhandled Duquesne. So when those games were going on, I was a bit worried. USC fading Utah State. Utah State fading USC in the spot. Utah State just has nothing. They just have nothing there at all. And then Oregon, I bought the dip on Oregon, and the correction I think was right. Oregon, some of the issues we saw last week were right. They just look soft. They should have lost that game. They had multiple special teams touchdowns. Ashton Genty is the best back in the country. He is a monster. So those were some of my worst calls. And bet, regret. Bet, regret. I'll mention the unders that we talked about. Oregon State, San Diego State. I never got around to playing that.
Yeah, the under. It was easiest under alive. So
the easiest under of the day. So that was my bet, regret. Oh, and then we had a lot of disagreement on the pod. Where you got me was Tennessee, NC State. That was probably my worst call. Yeah, you could say that the game flipped on a pick 6, but the difference was Tennessee dominated up front. and NC State couldn't do anything on offense. Nothing. They had 22 pass attempts for 104 yards and 28 carries for 39 yards, and they lost by 41. So NC State fans, I don't want to hear about the pick six. So, and then the other bet regret. Yeah, I probably just dabbled in too much trash early in the season, because we're still fine. The crazy thing is coming into this year, it's like I felt like I had less of a feel on these teams than ever because of the transfer portal, and then some of the data points we got are against FCS teams. The Jekyll and Hyde of some of these teams from week 1 to week 2. I mean, that's college football, but was pretty crazy this year. I mean, look at Notre Dame and Penn State. So how about you? Best call, worst call, bet regret?
Well, the best calls definitely came from the show. Iowa State, Tennessee. It's quite amazing to me that I can surgically have a good call with Tennessee and with Iowa State and Louisiana from the show too. And those plays, it's like Iowa State went down exactly like we handicapped it. It went over just a little bit. It was a field goal game. It ended on a field goal. From a Tennessee perspective, knowing that NC State's secondary was not going to be able to handle the fifth gear Tennessee Volunteers. And then you look at, so best call, a couple of those games right there called out exactly, but then absolute disaster from a worst call perspective with Michigan.
Michigan, I tried to tell you.
It wasn't even close. It wasn't even close. They didn't even, I mean, the 3 turnovers is one thing, but just inept offense. Defense couldn't tackle. You have to give all the credit in the world to Texas, which I do. I don't know, what do we want to use? It's a WWE term. The mental fortitude, the intestinal fortitude to show up in the big house and just dominate like it didn't matter if they were in Austin or if they were in Ann Arbor. Texas was buttoned up. They're crisp. I thought for a long time over the summer that Texas was just a level below Georgia. They played so well on the road. I'm never going to expect Texas to fall off I've raised their floor. I think that's the way that we should call Texas football, is their floor is no longer like a disaster game like Notre Dame. Colorado, I loved against Nebraska, complete domination in the trench. Colorado was horrific. Could not keep Shedeur clean. Shedeur made a lot of mistakes. Couldn't get the offense going. Shiloh's
They can't
out.
run the ball. They're so one-dimensional. Like,
Yep.
it's insane. You just drop everyone back. You can still get pressure, and it's a mess.
I think one thing about that really stood out was Matt Rule coach circles around Dion last night. It was like one guy was JV, one guy was, blue blood college football. So bet regret wise, I was very in tune to that Sacramento State, San Jose State game, and Sacramento State was good for a quarter. And then San Jose State turned on the Jets with Dr. Emmett Brown at quarterback, getting the feeding the ball to Nick Nash against Sacramento State. And I knew San Jose State was not going to have any more. Who is this roster? Who is this team? Why are we running an offense that's not the triple? And my bet regret is you're calling them out for money line, and they had no problems with Air Force. Air Force did not create a methodical drive. Air Force did not create an explosive drive. In 14 offensive possessions, Air Force crossed the 40-yard line once. Air Force gained 16% of available yards. The national average is 44%. Air Force gained 16% available yards against San Jose State's defense. I bet regret San Jose State so much because I knew after watching the final 3 quarters against Sacramento State, this team didn't have any more questions. Emmett Brown is a competent quarterback and get it to Nick Nash, and that's really all you need in Mountain West play to take some games. So San Jose State, I whiffed on trying to get on some of that.
Stop what you're doing right now and subscribe to the newest college sports YouTube channel.
College football is around the corner, and the new BBOC channel is your destination for betting on college sports.
Interviews with former college athletes and other topics such as College Football 25.
Subscribe now and get in on the action.
Yeah, a couple other games that I wanted to mention. Utah, Baylor. I mean, Utah should have covered against Baylor. They kind of just took their foot off the gas. I don't even think Baylor had a yard in the first half. Daquan Finn is just he's just not power 4 quality at quarterback. We credit to Michigan State for going on the road getting a win at Maryland. Kind of a bet regret for me.
They are legit, by the way. If you look at that box score, they gave up 3 turnovers and they dismantled Maryland at every aspect. Like Michigan State is big time on my radar.
I also have concerns about Alabama. I watched that entire. I had some money on South Florida, so I watched that entire game. South Florida beat them up physically. Their defensive line dominated that game. You might say, "Oh, Alabama won by 24." South Florida, 2 cowardly coach moves. Here's my rant of the week. Number one, my rant is Nevada not winning outright for my round robin. I had a 13-1 round robin, would have paid out 5-1 or 4-1 if Nevada won. Nevada, a 93% post-game win expectancy, highest of the day for a team that lost. They gave up a touchdown on the last play of the first half. They fumbled inside the 10, down 3 late. Then it was 4th and 1 late in Georgia Southern Territory. They didn't get it. Then they caught a Hail Mary at the end of the game, a couple yards short of the end zone. Devastating loss for the round robin. Maybe that's what I had to pay for the over in Duke Northwestern. But my rant of the week are these cowardly coaches. Cowardly coaches. Alex Golesh, look, I like, and he was on the sidelines. He was into that game, and South Florida was down 8 late, driving. And you might look at the final score and say, what happened? I mean, Alabama scored 3 touchdowns in the final 2 minutes of the game. South Florida's down 8 at Alabama. You're 4 touchdown underdogs, or even more. You're 30+ point underdogs. Don't kick the field goal there. Go for the touchdown. Like, what are you doing? But the most cowardly act of the day was done by Tony Sanchez at New Mexico State, who had Liberty on the ropes. He went for it on 4th down earlier in the quarter from his own 30. But later in the quarter, with about 3 minutes to go, they're up by 2, and New Mexico State has a 4th and 3 on the Liberty 45, and they are over 3 touchdown underdogs, and he punted it away.
Mm-hmm.
Unbelievable. And then, of course, Liberty went all the way down the field and scored a touchdown. Game over.
Yeah, if that was brutal. I wanted
know
Liberty
your
to
role. If you're a huge underdog, know your role. Increase the variance.
I wanted Liberty to lose just for the simple fact I want to hear their, I don't want to see their name on the 12th tile for the group of 5 spot. If there's 2
It was
things
a horrible day for them, though, because Oregon should have beat Boise, and we already saw
Yep.
what Liberty did. And then at the same time, Liberty's almost losing to New Mexico State. Liberty, ugh.
Yeah, if there's a couple notes that I want to get in before we sign off here, JC French of Georgia Southern can absolutely sling. I mean, that's 2 games in a row. This kid can absolutely hit every spot. I would make sure when Georgia Southern plays teams that don't have a secondary, that's a huge advantage. And then Tulsa covered again. I think odds makers have just written Tulsa off, and they've covered twice in a row. And although their quarterback didn't have, a stellar box score this past game covering against Arkansas State, he still was the number 1 rated quarterback after week 1. So I would just keep my eyes on what Tulsa's doing. That's 2 covers in a row, a team that we thought was dead.
Yeah, my main bet regret was UL Monroe. I had that spot circled with the coaching staff. I talked about it in the offseason, and it was waiting on a number, and then it slipped my mind. Horrible. I didn't play that. They won by 26 as double-digit dogs. I had that spot circled for so long. That was probably my biggest bet regret. Shout out to Illinois for a win over Kansas. There was they muffed a punt, and if you muff a punt and then recover it in the end zone, it's a touchback. That was a huge swing play in that game. And the other swing play in that game was in the final minute of the first half. Daniels threw a horrible wide receiver screen that got picked off for a pick 6. Illinois upsets Kansas 23-17. Missouri still hasn't given up a point this season. I know my Missouri, they played Murray State and Buffalo. Get a little bit better of a test against Boston College, and then Vandy. But the schedule, they still have UMass. Schedule is pretty easy. Anything else you want to add?
No, that's it for me. I'm ready to get out of here and crunch numbers.
All right, it's time for us to go break down the week 3 betting card. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Hit the like button, really helps us out. We'll be back. New BCS debuts this week. We'll talk some of the big picture Heisman. I think Quinn Ewers now is the favorite. College football playoff. The implications of this crazy weekend. Group of 5 guys will be back midweek. Then we'll be back as always Thursday night. We'll record the 3 and out portion of the episode at 6 p.m. Eastern live on Thursday night. Podcast will be out later that night in full. Time for us to go find some winners. Thanks for tuning in as always. Make sure you subscribe, tell a friend, tell an enemy. Make sure you leave a 5-star review. I'll do some giveaways in one of the next couple episodes. Just leave a 5-star review, say whatever. I'll choose a bunch. A couple of you already did it on my list. Appreciate that. Helps us out early in the season. But thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the wild ride of this past college football weekend. Many more to go. Looking forward to it. We'll see y'all during the week. Cheers.
Peace out.